I will start by welcoming everyone to our event on the occasion of Techstars Startup Week, Edmonton. It's called the Open House and Networking with Health and Life Science Companies at the Hub. So before I begin, I would like to just talk about a few Zoom protocols that we would be following today. I would request that please keep yourself muted unless you are speaking. And you can put your hand up and ask questions or type your questions into the chat. Our team is going to be moderating the chat, and we will make sure that we get to your questions. If not during the time of the event, we will definitely reach out and get to your questions and get you those answers that you were looking for. Also wanted to inform that we will be recording the event and we will be sharing the recording later. So just something for you to be informed of. And I will now request Marina to start the recording, please.
It's all good.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So before I begin, we would like to start with a territorial acknowledgement that the University of Alberta, its buildings, labs, and research stations are primarily located on the traditional territory of 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝘁𝗂𝗋, Blackfoot Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝗁𝘂𝗀𝗋 Anishinaabe nations, lands that are now known as part of Treaties 6, 7, and 8, and homeland of the Métis. The University of Alberta respects the sovereignty, lands, histories, languages, knowledge systems, and cultures of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit nations. With that, let us begin our event for today. We're going to have a very short presentation by the Health Hub Accelerator, which will be followed by a virtual tour. And then we'll have a panel discussion and a facilitated networking at the end. So for our Health Hub, basically, who are we? What are we all about? We are a community hub, and it's mainly for health and life science startups. Originally, we are a part of the University of Alberta Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry. The Health Hub and Accelerator has actually expanded beyond the University of Alberta. We are currently open to health and life science companies across Alberta. The image here shows our space, and we will actually have a much better tour of the space, and the entire area will go into the lab. We'll also go into the different parts of the space and talk about that a little bit later. We are located on the top floor of Enterprise Square, which is the University of Alberta's downtown campus. We have currently more than 4,000 square feet of prime location, and we provide startups a place that they like to call home. This space includes a fully fitted co-working space, a meeting room, kitchen, lounge, and a wet lab with most of the equipment that you would need for basic research. Our mission is to build a health and life sciences innovation community in Alberta by providing space, resources, support, and networks to health and life science entrepreneurs with the intent of increasing commercialization success of health and life science technologies. Our team, which is comprised of myself, Marina, Arun, and Jess, is small, but we are very powerful. Amongst us, we represent 3 different countries, 4 different nationalities. Equity, diversity is our mantra, and together we are well equipped to help health tech and life science founders with their business-related needs and to accelerate their path to commercialization. We are also well equipped to engage with the student community, as 2 of us are recent graduates of the MBA program from the University of Alberta, and 2 of us are current graduate students. So let us discuss a little bit about what we do. So as the slide shows here, we basically work and provide support in 4 main areas. One of them is the co-working space. And this co-working space and the shared wet lab space helps us to support companies in their R&D needs and operations. This way, we are helping to build a community of life sciences and health tech companies. The second one is in coaching, where we are providing guidance through a one-to-one coaching, and this is customized support based on the needs of innovators and entrepreneurs. Third, we provide resources and share information about events, grants, workshops which are happening in the community. These resources, we collate them and screen them, which helps our entrepreneurs to build scalable business models. And finally, by providing the connections that entrepreneurs need, we help to build the community through these connections. We make valuable connections to stakeholders such as investors, other accelerator programs, partner organizations, and also to other entrepreneurs to help them find the help and the support that they need. Our business model is mainly where we have got an online rolling application. So companies who are interested to join us go onto the website, and there is a very nicely elaborate apply to the hub button. You click on that, it takes you to a form, you fill up the form. It's an online rolling application. And then basically we also recruit other companies through outreach or through referral systems. Once the company has filled up the form, then we would analyze the applications basically to see first and foremost if there's a fit, and if they are in the health and life sciences sector, if we can help them in any way. We have an initial meeting between the company and us. And after we have analyzed and determined that there is a fit, then we start working with them to ascertain goals and how we can support them. We identify the key areas of support that the company needs. And through a monthly cadence of meetings, which brings us to our hands-on model, we start to work with the companies actively. And we also have our MBA interns who provide the business support to help the companies achieve the goals that they are trying to achieve. We also do everything through a progress tracker. So we track the progress of the companies. We provide them with the customized support that they need. And this helps us to maintain accountability, not only from our perspective, but also we help to keep the companies accountable for the goals that they had determined that they need support in. This shows us a current status of our companies as of now. We do have companies in a whole different gamut of different sectors, starting from digital health, medical devices, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, and others. So out of total 46 founders, 20 of them identify as female, which gives us a total of a 43% female founders, which is pretty significant. And our companies are extremely happy with the support that they have received from us over the years. As we can see from the high net promoter scores, our average score is around a 9.25. Again, pretty significant. This slide gives us an image of our current status of companies. Some of the companies that we have, it's not all of them, and we are constantly getting requests from companies to join our community. So this does not include all of our members. So if you are in the call today and you do not see your name of your company or your logo here, please rest assured that you are equally important to us and that we are not, by this slide is not representative of just all our companies, but only a few of them. So we would like to talk about a few of our metrics. Now, we are a community hub, as I previously discussed. We pride ourselves on the success of our companies. So over the last year, our companies have cumulatively raised over $7.1 million. This has been both in dilutive funding as well as non-dilutive funding. Total of 33 full-time jobs have been created. There have been some part-time jobs as well. And we have over 16 internships that the companies have brought on, 16 interns. And besides, we have many companies who have participated in other accelerator programs as well. So all of this we have not been able to do alone. We do have a large number of ecosystem partners. We have forged relationships and built partnerships with multiple different service providers. Our motto is to provide support to health tech companies at all stages of growth. These companies could be from ideation to all the way to scaling. Companies at different stages, they need different types of support. And so with our partnerships, we try to help and channelize the companies to the right support at the right time. So again, this slide shows some of our ecosystem partners, but not all. And we are constantly looking to build more relationships. So finally, we are almost at the end of our presentations, and we would start to move towards the virtual tour. Before we move to the next part, which is a virtual tour, I would like to mention some of the great feedback that we have received from the companies. Some of the feedback includes the mentorship and guidance that has helped them to evaluate their idea much better and head in the right direction. Business development and the partnerships with various stakeholders helped us a lot in getting accepted to various pitch competitions. Lab and office space has also been mentioned. Space for research, development and management was imperative for us as a biotech startup. Project work, the assistance on business projects like pitch, a deck, and business plan was highly beneficial to us. And again, the connections made by Alberta Health Hub and Accelerator helped in various ways, like finding talent, getting help on research projects, and assistance on grant applications. With that, I would like to request Jez and Arun, our two most valiant MBA interns, who are going to take us through a virtual tour of our space. Over to you, Jez and Arun.
Okay. Yeah. So hi, we're Jez and Arun, and we will take you on a virtual tour of our office and lab space here at the University of Alberta Health Hub and Accelerator. But before that, let me just highlight that this is an 8,000 square feet space that's massive at the heart of downtown Edmonton. And this is a very convenient and strategic location. It's just one train ride away from the university with like 3 stops. And it goes straight into the Enterprise Fair building. So during the winter, you don't have to worry about walking long distances coming to the office. Just go down from the LRT and then go up the elevator and you'll reach this place. So without further ado, let's head in. First stop is the meeting room. Come on in. So welcome to the meeting room. Here we have a beautiful backdrop of the city of Edmonton right on the wall. We have a long table for your meetings, able to accommodate 8 people. Over here, we have a white or transparent board for your writing purposes, a code track to organize your codes, a massive screen that can connect to your laptop or computer for your group presentations and your group discussions. We also have a huge Big Brother surveillance camera, so we're watching you. No, I'm kidding. That is a high definition webcam for your virtual conferences. If you need to talk to your team who's at the other side of the world or at the other side of the room, then that is a perfect thing you're going to need. And let's head to the main office space. So the moment you walk into this space, I would like to take your attention or pay your attention to the different colors and shapes that we have in this room. And I think that this makes for a very good space that is conducive for productivity. So what do we have here? We have several desks available for your use, and each desk has a cubby. It has a whiteboard, charging stations, both at the top and at the bottom of the desk. And we have drawers for your use as well. And if you want to put some stuff on the boards here, just use your push pin and you're good to go. The space that we have here is approximately able to accommodate 60 different people or 60 different workstations. And come on, I'll show you. So right here, we have all the other workspaces. And at the far right is our set of lockers for the use of your team. So that's great. And then for what I like about this place is it has lots of natural light, as you can see. That is on a regular sunny Edmonton day. Not now though, but that's okay. And if you're feeling hungry, don't worry, we have a kitchen and pantry. Come on, let's show you. Welcome. Generally, we have everything that you need, from a fridge to the coffee station to the dishwasher, coffee maker, toaster, microwaves, tables to eat. Whether you want to stand or to sit down, relax, we've got everything covered. Now, if you want to chill out, don't worry, we've got a chilling space for you as well. This is the lounge area. We've got a TV screen, some good lights over here, nice backdrop, and again, a view of downtown Edmonton. We've got more lockers here, by the way. So, yep, lots more space. And finally, the lab. So, check it out. Welcome. So, this is a level 1 lab. We have generally everything that you need for your experiments and for your testing needs. We have these countertops for you, stuff for storage. This is amazing. An ultra low temperature freezer if you need things super cold, colder than my ex-girlfriend's heart. This is a thing for you. Also got other lab benches. Lots of space. Some tech stuff and some lab stuff, which I think you will know better than I would. So yeah, workstations. We even have a sanitizer, I believe, and then an ice maker. Oh, sorry, this is the sanitizer. I apologize. And more spaces for your lab work, more refrigerators, again, a lot more fridge, so all good. And lastly, this is a common area if you want to work with your team to just chill and talk, eat, or have some coffee. There's a place to be. And this is it. This is the outside of the office. Thank you so much. It's Jez and Arun, and yeah, thank you. And over back to Paramita.
Thank you so much, Arun and Jez. That was a super nice tour of the space. Before we move on to the next phase of our presentation, I would like to request if anybody has any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, ask questions, or you can also type them into the chat. So this is, we have opportunities to ask questions during multiple times during this entire 1.5 hours. So this is the first question time period. Any questions, anybody?
I'll ask a question. I think it was mentioned that it was biosafety level 1 space that's there. Is there, and I know there had been discussions about potentially putting in an enclosed level 2 system. Is that still in the works?
So that's an excellent question. Currently, as the space has been laid out, there isn't like a separate space for level 2 hood. So we have been talking to, there are some of our companies who have the need for a level 2 hood, and we have heard requests for a level 2. So what we have tried to do in the interim is work with other collaborators. One of them is DynaLife. And DynaLife is right next door to Enterprise Square. And we have had those relationships in place. They have a level 2 lab. And then there are also level 2 labs at the University of Alberta. And as you are also very much associated with the U of A and the VPRI's office, Deborah, you know that we have had those conversations where we are working together, trying to see what are the different other options at the U of A to try to get the level 2 labs. The critical thing sometimes for that we hear from companies is because the level 2 labs, if it's present at the U of A and in the main campus, and they are working here, there's a commute that they have to think about. So we are trying to work together to see if there is a possibility or a potential to help them in that aspect. Tony, would you feel comfortable jumping on a little earlier?
Happy to, �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏. I noticed not everyone is here, but first, thanks for the opportunity to moderate what is a great group of panelists. So we have a large number of people on the panel, and so �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏 and I discussed this before, and we thought it'd be nice to hear from the startup founders and CEOs as sort of one group, and then the ecosystem leaders as another group. And now, not everyone is here just yet, �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏. So I was going to start with, let's see. So I'll burn a little time here, tiny little bit. Colin Coros, I don't think has joined yet, but he's the Chief Commercialization Officer of Nanostics. Dr. Jana Rieger is the CEO and founder of True Angle. I think Jana is here. Did I see her? Yes, Jana is here. And Jalene Anderson-Baron is the Chief Operating Officer and founder of Future Fields.
Before you jump into the panel, Tony, I would like to introduce you.
Oh, sure. Fire away.
I am so happy that Tony is moderating, and he's just like taken it all away, which is great. It shows the interest that he has always been very enthusiastic about the Health Hub and Accelerator. So Dr. Tony Briggs, many of us know him. He's an innovation and entrepreneur enthusiast. He wears a lot of hats. He's the executive director of the Technology Commercialization Center at the University of Alberta. He also teaches the executive MBA courses at the Alberta School of Business. Moreover, Tony is also the co-founder of one of our companies, 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗋. So having all of that, we can safely say that Tony has got his fingers in multiple pies, and I thought that he would be the perfect person to moderate our panel today. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏. And I see Colin Coros has joined, so I'm glad I had a little something for you to say about me to give him and all the founders a chance here. So let me just see the panel here. Well, so why don't we do this? We'll start with the startup founders and CEOs, and then we'll try to spend maybe about 20 minutes on that, and then we'll switch over to we have four fantastic people that have been building the infrastructures at the university and beyond, and I'll introduce them in the second part. And then my idea is to bring them all together, maybe for some general questions and to have some more discussion. So Colin, Jana, and Jalene, great to have you here. �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏 really put this question forward, and I think it's a great question. And so anybody jump in, and I don't know, �ស៊𝗏𝗻𝗔𝗏, if you can moderate who can jump in first, or at least Zoom wise. But it's a big stretch from sort of the early stage science to commercializing technology. And we both thought it'd be very interesting to hear your origin stories, the humble beginnings of some of the startups. And I was wondering if anyone could kind of each share your story, perhaps, of Nanostics, True Angle, and Future Fields. Who would like to start? I can see Jana. Jana, would you like to tell us a little bit about how you got started into this crazy world of commercialization of startups?
Yeah, absolutely. How far back do you want me to go?
I think the very earliest.
Okay, sounds great. So my background is as a professor, clinician, researcher, and the clinical research is what started all this. I was working at the Institute for Reconstructive Sciences and Medicine, and understanding patients who had head and neck cancer, watching what they were going through, and finding that after they went through all this treatment for this disease, that they were left with this condition of dysphagia, which is basically a swallowing disorder. So this condition doesn't only affect patients with head and neck cancer, it affects people with stroke and Parkinson's and lots of other folks, but my focus was with this particular population. And I had started a clinical trial that basically I had to close. It was for exercise, intensive exercise treatment, because I was really intrigued by intensive exercise at the time. Again, this is probably around 2005. It had been used in other parts of rehabilitation, but never applied to dysphagia. So I was like, man, we got to get patients on this and get them better, get them in, give them biofeedback on what they're doing. And none of them wanted to come in, simply because it was just too unrealistic to come to a hospital every single day for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it was. So I closed the trial, and that really set into motion a whole next series of events, which was, okay, so if we can't get them to come here to do this, how can we get it to them? We were funded by the Cancer Foundation. That took us on a 5-year journey, which about year 4 or so, the reality of needing to commercialize just was in front of us, and we couldn't ignore it, because had we not taken that leap, we really would not have been able to get this technology out of the lab and into patients' hands. So there was, we created a spin-off, True Angle, and really through a series of different mentorships, we were able to make that jump from this familiar world of academia and clinical research into commercialization. So that's our origin story, and we couldn't have done it without a really big community around us.
That's a wonderful story. I think the thing that I sort of take away from it is that the good news is that the impact on the entrepreneurship side is actually happening faster than the origins.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
So as soon as you put 10 or 15 years into this, I'm sure you're going to be more than expert with many companies probably. So thanks for that story, Jana. Jalene, we don't know each other, but I know you're 2 co-founders, and I wonder if you could share a bit of Future Fields' origin story.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, where to begin? I think the best way to describe it is it's been a series of happy accidents that just continue to lead to good things and success for us. So we technically started Future Fields in 2017 at Remedy Cafe over a couple of pints, 𝗩𝗍𝗄, Matt, and myself. And it was a slow, we didn't sit down and say, we're going to start a company and quit our jobs, but we just knew that there was this problem in the world, which was the impacts of traditional agriculture on, things like climate change, and being very concerned about that. And so we sort of started to dip our toes into areas related to this, and discovered the world of cellular agriculture. And so at the time, knew very little about it, but realized it was a very cool technology that we thought had the potential to address a lot of these problems that we cared deeply about. And so, again, very slowly over the next year or so, we looked more into this. We had attended one of the first conferences for cellular agriculture in New York around this time, put on by a company or a nonprofit called New Harvest. And again, just very slow, kind of slowly, evenings and weekends working on what we could do to become a part of this industry. And so we did originally start out as a consumer-facing company that was developing cultured meat products. So we developed our first prototype, I think it was in 2018, which was a chicken nugget. And that was very exciting for us. And, we had big plans to kind of try and take that to market. And so the timing really worked out well for us. Actually, we got into the Health Accelerator program first, which gave us access to lab space, which has been, I don't know where we would have been without that, because as a small company that had not even enough money to pay a single one of us to be working on it full time, it was a very big barrier for us. And so at that time, we started working on, just developing a prototype and trying to think a bit more about our business model. We were lucky enough in the fall of 2019 to be accepted into another accelerator program called 𝗁𝗁, and that took place in Singapore. And while we were there, so one of the major challenges in our industry is actually the cost of cell growth media, because traditionally it's been developed not for industrial use cases. It's been much smaller scale. And so that's something that we had been working on internally, was a solution to this problem of very expensive growth media that does not scale well. And so we did manage to come up with an answer to that problem. And I guess just to give some more insight to that, I think the first chicken nugget prototype we developed, we calculated was about $300. So definitely not something, that we were able to make a business model out of it. So when we were at the Grow Accelerator, they basically said, oh, so you have this, technology that could potentially solve the problem, not only for your own company, but for all of the other companies in your field. And so we did a pivot at that time to focus specifically on growth media, which later became even more specifically focused on creating growth factors and other recombinant proteins. And just things really kind of took off after that. That was clearly the change that we needed to make. And so, shortly after that, we were able to get some funding from Startup TNT here in Edmonton, which allowed us to have at least one of our co-founders go full-time all in on this. And then we were also lucky to be accepted into the 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗃 Accelerator in the spring or summer of 2020. And just kind of, inch by inch, we're able to get a little bit more funding, and finally we're able to raise a seed round. And I guess the rest is history. So we grew, we actually just moved out of the Health Accelerator space about 2 weeks ago into our own space, which, if I didn't appreciate it then, I appreciate it now, knowing all these things that we didn't have to worry about before. Garbage, who knew? It doesn't just collect itself. So it's been a big learning curve for us, in setting up our own lab and office space. And then I guess on the product side, we basically had not even proof of concept when we started out about 18 months ago. We had this idea that we thought would work for our technology, but had not actually proved it out. And so, just really over the last year, we went from being able to kind of scale up our platform, which we call the Ento engine, and it worked. And, we've actually been able to sell a couple of products, and now we have them available even on our website. So I'm not the technical person on our team, so I can't speak. I'm sure it was a lot more complicated than I just made it sound like, but definitely the supports that we received, particularly from having access to that lab space. We were able to grow our team, in the midst of COVID, from 3 to 20 in that space. And if we would not have had access to the lab and the facilities, there's no way we would be where we are today. So it really took a lot off our plates and allowed us to focus on this technology. And we're very appreciative for what we got from that program.
That's a great story, Jalene. I'm not to take anything away from the Health Accelerator, but there's several times that I've heard 𝗻𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗃 Cafe as an early starting point.
Yeah. And then the technology, I won't go too much into details, but when we were thinking about how can we solve this problem, Matt and I were in line at Tim Hortons in one of the buildings on campus. And
okay, so there is something to take away from 𝗻𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗃.
Yeah.
You need a lot of coffee.
𝗻𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗃 and Tim Hortons. Yeah.
So this is a fun question, and probably just for me. Do you still have that chicken nugget?
No. We have a picture of it. And Matt wanted to eat it, but I wouldn't let him. So I don't actually know what ended up happening to it. Probably just got tossed, but it's funny, the picture
probably
though.
Ate it, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, I hope not, because it was not made with our growth media or our growth factors. So it wouldn't have been good to eat, but.
That's a good story. Only eat chicken nuggets made with your growth factor. Well, thanks very much, Jalene. We'll come back in a bit. Colin, I did see Colin on here.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, perfect. All right, Colin and I go kind of way back pre Nanostics, but I'd love to hear the Nanostics story, and maybe also one question we thought about was just how COVID has impacted things, and I think it's I think Nanostics might see that very differently than most of, because you're in that space. But I'd really love to hear your origin story and the story there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks, Tony, and thanks everybody for joining the call, and good to see faces again. So I don't know, maybe a quick answer to the COVID. There has been no brilliant remedy ideas for the last year and a half, because we can't get out for COVID. But Yeah, in terms of our origin story, I think maybe that's where I'll start. It's actually, I think, quite a powerful story of what we can do in the province of Alberta and when we get great minds together. And really, the story starts with a gentleman by the name of 𝗓𝗓 𝗁𝗂𝗋𝗋. And 𝗓𝗓 𝗁𝗂𝗋𝗋 was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and he's a proud, successful Albertan. When he was diagnosed with prostate cancer, going through all the diagnoses, the biopsies, and the treatments, he had some heart-to-hearts with his oncologist, and he was asking, so what? I mean, I'm really interested in prostate cancer research, and how can I contribute to making Alberta successful? And he said, so who does prostate cancer research in Alberta? And the oncologist said, well, nobody does. You'll have to go to Toronto for that, or there's a good group in Vancouver. And Frank didn't like this answer and said, well, how can we change that? And he set out to begin to figure out how he can make prostate cancer research excellence in Alberta. And he went to a group of his friends, and it turns out he was an avid hunter. And he went to some of his buddies and said, I'd like to put together a fund to help prostate cancer research. And he got together with his friends, and they're all, they call themselves the Bird Dogs because they're a hunting group. And the Bird Dogs created the Bird Dogs Prostate Cancer Research Organization, raised some money, teamed up with the Alberta Cancer Foundations, and things started rolling. And the raised enough money to recruit a chair of prostate cancer research to the province, and that recruitment chair ended up being Dr. John Lewis, who they recruited from University of Western Ontario to start a prostate cancer research initiative. And that fund had grown up to over $10 million of research funding to bring John and his group to Alberta and the University of Alberta. And once John got here, he brought his team with him, and they started with just two very basic ideas. How can we cure prostate cancer, and how can we create tests to better diagnose prostate cancer? Two pretty simple questions, really. And they realized the first thing we need samples. We need prostate cancer patients to contribute samples so we can look at them and develop new tests and cures. And so they went out and created an organization called the Alberta Prostate Cancer Research Initiative. And they started, they couldn't find any good research samples, so they decided to do it themselves. And they built the Alberta Prostate Cancer Biorepository, and they started collecting prostate cancer samples and clinical information from men all across the province. And they brought together a team of not just researchers, but also clinicians, clinical scientists, research scientists, business development people, all together in this organization called 𝗩𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏, which is now a province-wide initiative, and since the inception is now one of the largest prostate cancer biorepositories in the world. And really using this foundation of samples, high quality, good samples, we started asking questions, how can we better diagnose disease? And one of the tools they used, we won't get into the science of it, was looking at these small molecular beacons in our cells called extracellular vesicles, and using this technology, which is a bit of a leading trending technology, they discovered that using prostate-specific biomarkers that they can create a test to better diagnose disease. And so based on this initial clinical study from the results of 𝗩𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏, we spun out a company called it Nanostics. We spun it in 2017, raised now up to over $5 million in equity to date, over $3 million in non-dilutive funding. We're about halfway through a pivotal 2,800 patient clinical study. We've teamed up with DynaLife, who's the clinical diagnostic provider for Alberta now, And we're running all of our clinical study in their facility, leveraging the 𝗩𝗏𝗃 network that we've created, creating a prostate cancer test that can more accurately predict men who should get a biopsy and those that do not need to get a biopsy. And so Nanostics been a great story. I think it's a story that Alberta can be proud of. And I guess the only other thing I'll say too is, I mean, Nanostics isn't the only story that came out of 𝗩𝗏𝗃𝗃, because Dr. John Lewis also spent time trying to cure prostate cancer, used a gene therapy approach and a gene delivery technology that he had, and created another company called Entos Pharmaceuticals. And they were poised to bring their first cancer genetic therapy to market when COVID hit. And so that company pivoted. Many will be aware that they use their technology to develop a COVID-19 vaccine, which is now is now about to begin phase 2 clinical studies. Using that technology, that cancer product has been put on hold a little bit. And that's also moving forward. So COVID pivoted that company. Nanostics, actually, the clinical trials were a little bit delayed because of COVID. In that sense, not a good practice of recruiting elderly men during COVID. But that was a temporary pause, and prostate cancer screening is up and running again in the province, and we're currently actively recruiting there too. So there's been dips and turns and twists, and some slowdowns comes COVID and some acceleration. So it's been an interesting year and a half, 2 years. I don't know how long it's been.
Thanks, Colin. That's an amazing story. I think, like all of them, I think it helps us recognize the importance of sort of persistence and the many resources deployed over a long period of time working against new problems. For those that are perhaps a little bit interested, the very origins of the U of A, and I've shared this with some of the other people on the panel. From Henry Marshall Torrey, recruited the first research professor named Clark, who developed the Clark process for the oil sands, which took a lot longer than you guys are taking to commercialize. So congratulations to you. But it really does show the importance of early stage research and investment towards a larger problem and the solutions you guys are coming up with, which is great. I was going to ask a question. There's a definition of entrepreneurship, which is one of many definitions, which is the assemblage of resources not currently controlled. And I think all of your stories told that to some degree. So I won't ask you about the resources that you've managed to assemble over this time. But I would like to ask, and then we'll switch to sort of the other half of the panel. If you were to give advice to someone, let's say in a lab now, feeling that they needed to or just with an idea, thinking that they needed to have more impact than they were currently having, and needed to supply a product or service to the world that was really important. What this is a common panel question, but what piece of advice at this moment would you give them? So I'll ask that of all three, and then we'll switch to the other panel. Maybe in backwards order. Colin, do you want to jump at that, or?
Sure, I'm already on it. So that's a nice definition of entrepreneurship. Tony, I don't know if I ever heard it, but I guess my piece of advice is, if you're going to assemble resources, assemble a strong team, because nobody can commercialize, nobody can make a breakthrough independently. It's really the strength of the team that made Nanostics and Entos successful, having the resources of 𝗩𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃, having the clinicians involved, having a broad base of people, and good people, smart people, and hardworking people. If I was going to pick one resource that I needed to start, pick a good, strong team.
That's great. And one of the nice things about the Health Accelerator is it comes with people already. So there's like a part of a team already there to help you. So that's a great way to leverage things. Okay, Jalene, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think
You can't use the same answer. We'll take every answer
well,
as given.
I agree. Okay, I'll give two then. But I
So
mean,
we'll stack answers.
Yeah. Stack it, yeah. Hire people smarter than yourself. We have done that, and I just am astounded every day at the quality of the team that we've somehow managed to build around us. And so that's definitely top of mind for me too. But I think for us specifically, we have had really great luck with two things, that is accelerator programs, and then also, just accessing non-dilutive funding through things that we don't necessarily think that we're eligible for when you start out. And so we've kind of taken the motto the first year of just apply for anything and everything. And it does sometimes take up a large amount of resources, but when you're relatively cash strapped and you don't have a lot of options, I think it's easy to think that, maybe you're not eligible for something, or something seems out of scope. But we have just had such great luck, and I'm not sure where we would be again without some of the things. Even like the Health Accelerator, I think we didn't really fit the mold at the start of what kind of company, or we thought we didn't, but obviously we were accepted, and that's really what kickstarted things. And even looking at 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝗁𝗂𝗋, as we were going through that program, well, first of all, I couldn't believe that we were accepted in, but we applied, last minute, thinking there's no way that we're going to get accepted. We have nothing on paper that we can really show for this company. And even going through the program, I was constantly second guessing things. It was such a learning experience for me, because I was so new to the world of startups. But we just, every opportunity that presented itself, in terms of accelerator programs and also funding things like Alberta Innovates, IRAP, Green STEM, MyTax, we've had such good luck with all of those. And so just, I think, apply for absolutely everything. It's a lot of work, but without those, we would not be where we are today.
Great. Thanks very much. Thanks, Jalene. Great answer. Jana, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I think what I could add on top of that is to bring someone in who has a business mind around product development early on, and who can really get into lean product testing. In academia, we're so used to testing the crap out of everything for years, and we really have to reframe that if we want to be innovative and we want to do things quickly. So I would definitely bring someone on who had some of those more business skills in that area earlier into the development.
Wonderful answer, given we have 2 MBA interns and 2 science-based, one science-based MBA, another service-based MBA, I would say, at the Health Accelerator. So that's, I'm sure they all love to hear that answer. Thanks very much, Jana. Well, let's all kind of give a kind of Zoom clap for our entrepreneurs at this stage, a little mini clap. And I'd like to jump on to some of our ecosystem leaders, and then maybe we'll try to bring it all together at the end. So thanks very much, Colin, Jana, and Jalene. Who we have as the sort of second part of our panel is Dr. Deborah James, who's the Associate VPRI and has been a constant supporter, even if you haven't met her already, of all things innovation and entrepreneurship at the university, and formerly at the Faculty of Medicine. Similarly, I'd like to introduce Dr. Lawrence Richer, who's the Vice Dean of Research at the Faculty of Medicine. Arden Tse, who's not at the university, but he has been everywhere, all things entrepreneurial, is now our sort of leading venture capitalist in the Edmonton region. He's a managing investment manager at Yaletown. And then Dr. Quang Tran, who I've not yet met, but who's the Associate Director of the Tech Transfer Office at the University of Alberta. So welcome to all of you. And I think what might be great here is, if maybe starting with Deborah, is to just give us a brief understanding of your role within the university and the types of things that you're trying to build here for the entrepreneurs.
Great, thanks, Tony. I've been around the university for a long time, and just recently in this new role at the university, and it's an associate vice president role for innovation and commercialization. So that's new. The University of Alberta has been innovating for 100 years or so, but to really put some focus on it now, I think is great. And so, one of the key things that we have done, and maybe I'll let Quang speak to that a little bit later, is bring tech transfer functions back into the university. And so we're wanting to embed tech transfer more so within the faculties and the departments, within the corridors of the university where the technology is actually being developed. And Quang, I'll let you speak to that a little bit more. We're also just bringing more cohesion to the assets that exist across campus. And there's quite a few assets there. And in the context of this conversation, I see the Alberta Health Accelerator as being a point of contact into some of the health-related assets that exist. And so that's, clinical trials. Lawrence will probably talk about that, including a real-world evidence unit where you can get support on real-world kind of data trials. We've built out some BD supports, business development supports, and of course that includes this accelerator program. And it's got some great outcomes so far. Thanks to �ស៊𝗶𝗿𝘁𝘂𝗹, and Sandra's on the call here too, I see, and she was the former director of the unit too. We've also created a pre-accelerator program to support that early stage development and venture creation at the university. That's a big barrier, as I think we all know, is overcoming some of those steps to that that very early stage piece around business development. I know, Tony, you know more than I do about an incubator that's being developed in engineering. And also we're developing a lot more training for undergraduate students. Again, Tony's involved in that. It's an undergraduate certificate for entrepreneurship for students. And also a component of that is online and accessible to the external community as well. And I'm in the midst, I can't talk, there's not much to report yet, but looking at greater training assets for graduate students as well. And there's opportunities to bring some MyTex training and programming to the university. So we're working through that. Yeah, that's my high level overview.
I think that's wonderful, Deborah. And I think you bring out a nice point that all of these things are important. And if we can get the companies big enough, we can start to create this nice virtuous cycle between the students and the student experience, and then building of the company. So we all hope you grow really quickly so you're able to hire lots of grads who can then also help you grow quickly. And we need to get to that level of things in our environment. So thanks very much, Deborah. And Lawrence, are you here?
Right here.
The numbers keep growing, but it's harder for me to find your pictures in the matrix. So thanks so much. Lawrence, could you please tell us a little bit about your background and your support of this space?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I feel it's necessary to start with how I chose my career. After high school, I met with my uncle, who was a serial entrepreneur in Lloydminster. And I recall that like it was yesterday, because it was close to yesterday. Where I left that visit with him thinking entrepreneurship looks really hard. I think I'll do medicine. And so I'm a physician, and I think it's interesting that I'm sitting here talking about innovation and entrepreneurship. But I lead at the Faculty of Medicine Dentistry, the Northern Alberta Clinical Trials and Research Center, and I serve as Vice Dean Research for the faculty. And, the way I come to this is, we, at NACTRAC, the Northern Alberta Clinical Trials and Research Center, we see about $30 million in clinical trial activity annually. Our major clients, big pharma, and, or contract research organizations. Those are our two big clients. And it's a pretty well-oiled machine when it comes to working with those groups. But then from time to time, we get small companies coming to us saying, could you help us with this trial? And I was shocked at how useless we were and how confusing it was when you didn't have a major multi-pharma, sort of driving the ship. And so something that we've been working gradually at NACTRAC with Deborah's support and the Health Accelerators is thinking about how could we better meet the needs of small companies that had regulatory or evidentiary needs that required touching patients. And that's really where we excel. We are at sort of the borderland between the academic institution and the hospital systems. NACTRAC itself is a joint venture between Alberta Health Services and the University of Alberta. And so when it comes to trying to reach patients, potentially reach samples, and enroll in studies, that's something that often we can do. But meeting the needs of smaller companies that were coming to us without a protocol, without all the bells and whistles that we just take for granted when we're dealing with big pharma, we really just need to think differently about how we do that kind of work and support those kinds of companies. So. To Deborah also raised the real world evidence unit, and that's something that I would like to draw attention to. It is a resource that, again, large pharma is leveraging mostly, but through research channels, we have the opportunity to look at Alberta's health data generally, and use it for the purposes of understanding how products might work in an environment, what the current status is in the Alberta population, as well as tracking products that are in the environment and how they're performing. And so, that's something that we've built over the last few years and is growing steadily. And I see that as a resource that we can leverage here in Alberta.
That's great. I'm really struck by something that you mentioned. Is there any current? A lot of the companies have these complex regulatory, let's say, regimes that they face. They may not even know the total extent of all those regimes. Is there a way to connect that service to the Health Accelerator? Is that in the plan, or? Yeah,
great question. Great question, Tony. So, again, when you look at small molecules and pharma, the regulatory landscape is still a huge challenge, but at least the pathway is clear. With everything else, the pathway is, I find, far less clear. And so we're looking at that on two fronts. Yes, we just need to provide support in that arena. We need people who understand that environment, who have time to commit and walk through that and some of the nuances and challenges that smaller companies may bring, because they're not sort of going down that typical path. Digital health, for example, digital technologies are a good example where things just get a lot more confusing in terms of what the evidentiary needs and what the regulatory requirements are, particularly if you're seeking reimbursement. So the other thing we're doing there is studying it, working with the Institute for Health Economics. We've just taken on a postdoctoral fellow who will be looking at in the digital health landscape, the evidentiary and reimbursement landscape for digital health across the country. So, part of it is assembling information as well as trying to bring some talent on board that can at least address some of these questions where it's answerable.
Oh, that's great. That's really helpful. Love to see more happening there. I think as many would, I think, on the call. Maybe I'll jump to, thanks very much, Lawrence. Maybe I'll jump to, just to kind of keep it in the U of A just for a moment, Dr. Quang Tran, and then we'll go to Arden Tse for the outside perspective, though he's as much inside as anyone else in this community. So Quang, could you tell us a little bit about your background and your role in tech transfer services, and then some of the things that you're further developing to support the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I'm one of the associate directors. There's three of us within the Tech Transfer Services office here at the U of A. This group was officially formed about a year ago, and we took over the tech transfer functions from that were previously handled by Tech Edmonton and the tech management group there. While those services were done at Tech Edmonton, obviously there was some aspect of our work that had more of a community involvement, local community, not just U of A. And so now that we're repatriated back into the U of A, we have more of a U of A focus with a lot of the work that we do. There's about eight highly specialized people in our office. Me personally, I've been working in this field for almost 10 years now. Started at U of C for a couple of years, and then have been with the U of A for about 8 years now. And so our primary function is to manage the U of A's IP portfolio and facilitate commercialization of those technologies. So most of the time we're dealing with patentable IP, but we also have the capacity to deal with other types of IP, such as copyright and trademarks. That's a small portion of our total portfolio, but things like health quality of life questionnaires, things like that, that's something that we're also set up to help commercialize as well. So typically when someone has an invention, they come to our office. A U of A researcher develops something in the lab, they come to us. Our services typically involve things such as assessment of the commercial potential of that technology. We'll file patent applications to protect the technology. We'll help them navigate commercialization, so connecting with industry, either as potential licensees or sources of sponsored research funding. And then we'll also help negotiate any business agreements related to that technology. So if we're talking to companies, we'll put together confidentiality agreements. We'll negotiate licenses with third parties. If the researcher wants to form a spin-off company, we've recently developed a series of standardized spin-off agreements that really help facilitate the transfer of IP from the university into those companies so that they can go ahead and move forward quickly with the next phase of technology development, accessing various accelerator services such as the U of A Health Accelerator. And we're also now developing a lot of programming to help just educate the U of A community on intellectual property and all of the processes and procedures that are involved in commercializing that IP. So obviously most of our work is done pre-company formation, when the IP is just created and before it's transferred. But we are also, where we can, trying to help develop resources that can help companies after the IP has already been transferred.
Great, thank you. Really, really appreciate that. And I know those, obviously with Deborah and some other things, I've been a party to some of those discussions over time, and it's great to see finally a really focused unit back at the U of A with a real focus on the U of A. It will relate to my last question that I'll open to all of you. But before I do that, thanks very much, Quang, and I'll jump to Arden Tse. Is Arden here?
I am indeed.
Perfect, Arden. I've had Arden to so many classes at this point, and I'm fortunate to be able to give back a little bit, which is to make some connections from our students to the venture capital community, and hope it'll build as much as possible here to support our companies. But Arden, could you tell us a little bit about what you do, and then how you'd like to, you're on the outside, how would you like to see more coming out of the U of A, and what you'd like to see from the Health Accelerator as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I do have, not only being an alumnus of the U of A myself, I spent 3 years managing the University of Alberta Venture Mentoring Service, which is where I really kind of got that exposure to what's going on at the university and, how the intellectual property works and such. And now for the last 3 years, I'm with Yaletown, managing one of their funds, the Accelerate series of funds, or Accelerate Fund 3. And, we invest in early stage B2B tech companies. Now, we're generally agnostic to industries. We don't focus solely on any one. And I think traditionally it's been difficult for funds like ours to invest in medical and life sciences technologies because most models are, they don't fit with our thesis, right? It takes a long time and it's a very binary outcome before you get to any sort of revenue. So you kind of have to have this money pile in, it goes for a while, and then either the thing takes off or it doesn't. But what I'm really encouraged to see over the last few years at the university is these life sciences and more digital type medical companies coming out that can attract capital. And that's not to say that the more traditional models don't work either. There's a lot of angel funding out here as well. I think if you look at any successful startup community, at the heart of it is a really great university. Right? Where else does intellectual property and research and all this stuff come from? It's one thing for a startup to be, a couple of business students with an idea for a marketplace. There's plenty of those. But how do you get to the deep tech plays? How do you get to the stuff that's really hard to replicate or is very unique in terms of its ability to change the world? And that typically comes from some sort of post-secondary institution that specializes in things like biomedical research, artificial intelligence. And so it's extremely important for funds like ours to see this continuing IP coming out of university. And I think, whereas in the past we did, it was handling of IP was more of a, a one-on-one, a customization deal. Like you look at, we've invested in True Angle, we invested in Fund 2, Drug Bank, and in both of those, the intellectual property needs to be kind of tweaked a little bit. We're seeing more of a uniform approach to things, and I think that's only going to help. And I mean, there are lots of companies that are investable coming out of the university. Future Fields obviously is one that, it didn't fit our investment thesis, but at the same time, didn't mean it wasn't going to go on to be a success. And I'm glad to see, all the capital you've raised and progress you've gotten to. You look at 𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗪, right? Again, doesn't fit our model necessarily, or the traditional VC model. They raised probably in total like $4 million from angel investors until they were bought out earlier this year. So, I think the potential is there. And I really do see that now that the U of A is taking the IP and getting their hands more hands-on in the managing of it and standardizing it. I'm looking forward to more investments down the road. It'll keep people like me employed, that's for sure. So
thanks very much, Arden. What I'll do is I kind of want to open it up to everyone now. So kind of another interim clap for our institutional builders here. I'm kind of think the big question for all of us, Health Accelerator and beyond, is how do we further tap the vast potential of the U of A to build our ecosystem? And I'd be kind of interested to your thoughts, and I'll put them in sort of three categories, which I think I'm kind of stealing a bit from a guy named 𝗍𝗂 of why you might want to become entrepreneurial. And I'm not doing his justice. I didn't memorize it. That's not the kind of classes I teach anyway, so not that good at it. But the kind of idea of, what are we doing well and we should do more of? What are we doing wrong and should right? And then maybe the last thing is, and any one of these is good on your thoughts. And then what new good things could we do? So, three general categories of things. And just curious, what in those, what are we doing well that we can do more of to further increase the potential of the U of A? Anything we're doing a little bit off? I know tech transfer services just got restructured, so I think we've had a pretty big investment in that category. And anything really new that you think we need to be doing? So to the panelists first, and then I think after that we can open up questions to the audience, to the panelists. Anybody want to jump in? Yeah.
Well, the non-entrepreneur here will say we need to reward it, right? The incentives at the university are aligned to academic outputs, and I think Jana referred to that, right? I mean, unless you align the incentives so that entrepreneurship matters and innovation matters, you'll struggle. So I see the university making steps along those lines. I can say the Faculty of Medicine has put innovation and outputs in that category, distinct from academic outputs, in its strategic plan. So it's a step in the right direction to say we're going to have to start recognizing this as real outputs as part of the core mandate to the university.
That's fantastic news. So is that specifically things like patents as well as papers, startup efforts, those kinds of things?
Yeah, we purposely went beyond patents. We wanted, I think we used the language that, 5 things that other people would pay for. Something like that.
That's really quite interesting to put some economic value or something like that. Oh, that's great, Lawrence. That's really good news. Other thoughts? Hopefully other faculties
I'll jump in.
Deborah. Oh, okay. Fire away, Arden.
Oh, no, really. I mean, I think what I've seen evolve over the last 5 or 6 years that's really encouraging is the higher visibility of support for these kinds of entrepreneurs. I think it's important to understand that medical science, life science, and biotechnology is very different from a lot of the other software startups and that sort of thing we see. There's a fine balance. We always hear about, spend time on your company, don't jump into too many accelerators or get distracted, et cetera, et cetera. But I think in particular in this area, as Jana and a few other people have noted, it's important to reach out, get noticed, because that's how you're going to find staff, you're going to find funding. It's a bit more of a niche community than it is just the general startup and tech community. And I think that with continued awareness of the programs, again, like the Health Hub Accelerator, like things like IMYAG, like, all the stuff that we've been talking about, that's only going to help. And I would encourage, budding entrepreneurs, as we call them, to take advantage of that and not be afraid to get visible, right? Because that's the only way people are going to find you and be able to offer help. Whereas the general startup community and, like Startup TNT and that sort of thing, it's a pretty tight-knit network. People are already word of mouth talking to each other and they're already in that space. So again, for those in the sciences and such and some of the deeper tech, don't be afraid to get into programs like CDL. I mean, that's how Jana got to know some of the people from our fund. Dave Edmonds, the A100, got help from Christina Williams at AEC. That's how you build a relationship and build up a history with all the people that could provide you resources.
That's a great point. Maybe a few years ago, when Ontario was really heavily investing in innovation, you would see the student startup companies coming out of Waterloo with multiple accelerator logos on themselves all across the world and everything like that. And certainly Future Fields told that story. It's great to hear the story about True Angle as well. So, the way that I see these generically is they're all networks. And the bigger you expand your networks, the more serendipity and opportunities you can develop. So I think a really excellent point, Arden. And again, 𝗩𝗶𝗿𝘁𝘂𝗀𝗋, my company, I'll speak personally, is because of the Health Accelerator that we learned about the cells program that we got involved with very early on. So I think this accelerator can play a really important role in connecting with other resources and networks. So great. Deborah, why don't we go to Deborah and I'll come to Colin unless you want to follow on. Let's go to Deborah and then I'll.
Yeah, I was just going to build a little bit on what Lawrence was saying. Internally in the academic environment, that incentivization and that reward system is critical to sort of improving the innovation, the volume and the quality of it that leaves the university, right? And that is a key goal for the university, is to, I always say those two terms, increasing the volume that leaves and also the quality of just leaving. And another piece to that is really our policy and process framework. We've done so much with tech transfer. And I think now we're at this point where we did finally launch a committee looking at all of the intellectual property policies and processes for the university. And that will be an enormous amount of work. But I think it's an opportunity to build a framework, an institutional framework that better supports innovation leaving the university. And so I'm really excited about that piece of work, and we'll be engaging, Lawrence is on the committee, but we'll be engaging, the internal and the external community broadly to get input on that. And, but at the end of the day, there's no probably right way to do that. It comes down to all of these assets that we're talking about today, and the business development supports, et cetera. But we do need to look at our framework around policies and processes, and look at how can we, for instance, bring industry to the table more. I think that is something the university does a lot of, but I think we can do more of that. And again, that comes back to making that easier through policies and processes, right? So I just wanted to comment that the university's spending a lot of effort there right now.
That's great. And I think one of the areas where Edmonton is kind of weak, generally speaking, is the corporates, that we can't really go that easily across the street to an organization that's 100 times bigger than we are or whatever, and try to leverage some of those resources. So I think it'd be great to use the university as more of a capacity in that regards. So thanks very much, Deborah. And I feel Colin, I think, is going to match to Arden. So if you can go back to the Arden conversation, but maybe he'll tie it all up. Colin, your thoughts?
No, I'll tie it all up and iterate. So yeah, I agree. I mean, in the work that university is doing is great in terms of trying to improve procedures, but it all comes down to culture, right? We need a culture of innovation. We need a culture of we can do this at the university. And quite frankly, I think for the most part, we've had such positive experiences at the U of A. Right, just looking at this panel, I mean, Deborah's been instrumental, and even Dr. 𝗍𝗂, he's helped us with Entos get some funding through CHR. Like the university just has to change the culture. Say this is okay. Entrepreneurship is great. This is positive. Yes, we'll do it. There'll be problems with the procedures. There'll be IP we have to consider. There'll be challenges and confidential or conflicts of interest. But if we start with a yes, that we're going to create a culture of entrepreneurship, that we're going to enable companies to be successful, that's where it starts. And we've had nothing but positive experiences at the U of A, and more of that, and continuing with that kind of culture is what's really going to be the long-term success, I'd say.
Yeah, this is great. It would have been, I think, 5 years ago, kind of hard to have a panel like this with everybody cheering everyone else on. It wasn't necessarily what was happening in our ecosystem. So I think it's really, really pretty exciting. So maybe we'll end there with the building of the innovation culture, Colin, unless any of our other panelists wants to jump in. I think that's a very nice note. Going once? Okay. Well, thank you again so much to our panelists, but we're not done yet. We're going to take questions, perhaps in the chat, from those of you in the audience, and no science questions, I think, but you can get specific on other things in terms of the Health Accelerator. So thanks very much to the panel, and let's see what folks' questions are. Please jump in.
Thank you so much, Tony, for moderating the panel. I see Martin has a comment in the chat. Martin, would you like me to read it out, or do you want to?
Yeah, please read it. That would be great. Thanks.
Okay, so Martin says that I think it is more than measuring academic. Where did it go? Sorry. I think it's more than measuring academic performance as it relates to innovation, but also time commitment. At present, the typical distribution of time is 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% service. No explicit time allocated to innovation or commercialization. That's a very valid point indeed. I'm wondering if somebody in the panel would like to comment on that.
Lawrence, I'm waiting for you to comment.
Yeah. I'm sighing, Martin. Thanks for that question. No, we've done some thinking about this. I'm not sure we've got the right answer, right? I mean, you've got an organization that pays for your work. And then now you're being drawn to an external organization to do important work. How do we marry those worlds is the fundamental question. And I think it's along the lines of acknowledging that you intend to spend time on a company, and basically relieving you of that time in some sort of secondment or something like that away. But that's just a thought. It's to bake innovation and entrepreneurship into the job description of a U of A academic. I'm not sure that'll fly, but that's just off the cuff. Maybe you've got a better answer.
So �ស៊𝗏, I wasn't sure. You did read the question. Probably that was my job, but maybe it's your job. I don't know. Should we have you moderate the questions? I had questions right off of John's question. Actually, it was originally 𝗏𝗏's question, which was, what about the role of non-dilutive versus dilutive funding? And I said, well, that's getting a little specific for the group here, but I think it's actually a really important one. So John's question is broader, is how do we facilitate success? So there's the capital resources, and I think Jalene really made the case for many of the supports that are available in Canada and beyond. But how do we think about dilutive versus non-dilutive funding? And Jalene, could I put you on the spot a little bit to tell us a little bit about Future Fields success? Because there's a lot of flexibility in some sense with dilutive funding, taking it in as equity and convincing investors that this is how you want to build the company. And non-dilutive funding can take you in some different directions. How does Future Fields navigate that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, of course, we prefer if it's non-dilutive funding, and like I said, we've had really great luck with that. But I think for us, it's been what we really found at the start is that it's very hard to acquire capital when you have no capital, and so just having access to those things, even non-dilutive, so many of the opportunities that came up for us, we were not eligible for until we had a little bit of funding to already work with, and so for a company like us that's deep tech and so far away from really bringing in much revenue, they kind of worked together for us, I guess, and then we were able to get a little bit of one and then leverage that to access other opportunities, perhaps in the non-dilutive side, different grants it requires something like a 50% input on our end, but you really can't have one without the other. I think we've just been lucky to be able to build on both aspects of it and really leverage it. But without that sort of initial, whatever it looks like, something small. I think for us, the first investment we received was like $50,000, but that gave us such a huge opportunity then to be able to have one person kind of go in full time and then be eligible for some of those other opportunities. So yeah, that's, I guess, my perspective on it. Both are very important, but you need one almost to be able to access the other.
And as soon as you said that, I knew what Martin was thinking, because we just talked about this a couple of days ago, which is that a lot of the Canadian environment requires matching funds, where the US environment often does not in the SBIR grant programs and something like that. So it's sort of like success fuels success, it seems like. So I think, Jalene, if I could sum it up, is like get started, get some money, and then go from there.
Just do whatever you can to get the first, but that's it, just because once you become eligible for one, and then all the rest of the doors start to open for you. But absolutely, that big challenge at the start is just getting something to be able to work with, and that's certainly what we found with that cost sharing. So yeah.
I'll also I'll jump over to Martin's more specific comment in just a moment, but I think it's important for everyone to, I think, kind of recognize this is you can't get very far as a startup because you're doing a lot of networking without everybody knowing part of you. So the more, let's say, elevated and informed institutional, there is no best place to go. You go everywhere and you meet everybody. And I think the more informed structures and support systems, both at the university and beyond, I think all recognize that you're all trying to move something forward and do something new. So Martin brings up another point, which is, or the related point is that there may be structural barriers culturally from equity, diversity, and inclusion point of view if you don't already have access to capital and perhaps you're in a more disadvantaged situation, how do we go about addressing those kinds of problems? And I know organization I work with, 𝗍𝗶𝗿𝘁, is looking at those things quite actively. Startup Edmonton has been really doing a lot of work to enhance access to less advantaged individuals. But panel, any other thoughts how we could be doing that better?
That's a tough one, Tony. It begins, I think, with awareness for sure. And in the academic setting, there is a lot of strategy around EDI, which is great, but how to, I guess I'd lean on others out in the ecosystem, how to do that externally.
Tough one for everyone. Yes, go ahead, Arden.
I mean, when it comes to this kind of funding, specifically this matching type of arrangement, there's a philosophical question, I guess, of what is the role of the university, right? And that kind of funding. Are you there to drive the innovation, or are you there to follow on the innovation? What is the point of that matching? And I mean, often that matching kind of component we see is like from government is really about reducing the risk, right? And the government doesn't have the time to do all due diligence. So you get WD, or now Prairies Can West, or whatever they call themselves, and you get BDC. And what they like to do is get the assurance that, I've talked to many of, we have a lot of contacts there, and they'll say, look, we're in if there's some private money in there, if there's a venture fund in there, we're happy to get in, because that gives us that comfort, right, that you've done your due diligence. So is it a case of giving those organizations more resources to do due diligence? I mean, I don't think there's an easy answer here, but I think we have to go beyond just how do you structure it and ask, well, what's the point of this money? What are we trying to do with it? And that might point to kind of how to get that EDI portion going. But it is tough. I hear you. I mean, how are you expected to, if you're a first-time entrepreneur and you don't have a lot of networks and resources, and you've got an organization saying, we'll give you $1 million, but you have to match it with equity first. Well, you're kind of back to square one, aren't you? I'm like, if I could raise $1 million cash, I probably wouldn't need your money, right? So it's tough. And I think if we really want to drive that conversation and that function of we're going to, our role at the institutional level is to stimulate innovation, then it is to not have those strings attached and to understand that maybe we have to put some resources into due diligence. And getting a certain level of comfort of risk, and knowing that this isn't about getting a return. This is about the longer term picture of, what happens when we get a whole bunch of successful entrepreneurs and ventures coming out of university. And even extend it to the idea that maybe this is more of a advancement in alumni relations involvement as well. Because when you look at institutions like Harvard, Yale, what do? They're not there to make money off of the entrepreneur, the companies. They're there to develop a relationship where those successful entrepreneurs come back and donate a building to the university, right? Those are the monuments. That's the long play. And perhaps that's, it's worth exploring that down the road.
Arden, could I follow up with a question with you on the short play? How does Yaletown think about non-dilutive funding first, before, or when you're screening organizations? And then do you encourage focus on non-dilutive funding after you invest? Do you have an opinion or position on it generally?
I think there's always a caveat of, I always encourage entrepreneurs to get revenue, right? But that's a different kind of industry. And I think non-dilutive funding can be very important. I know it was important for, for True Angle, for Jana, right? The Cancer Foundation, Alberta Cancer Foundation was a big help, and there's big dollars that are available for that specific kind of work. Absolutely. I mean, I think non-dilutive funding it's indicative of the fact that you have the ability to get resources, that you've had money to operate with, and to, you're not just focused on raising money. You got it in, you're able to do some work, now you're going to raise equity. So the de-risks a little bit. We also like leveraging opportunities, right? If we know that, because again, for the investor, if I put in $1 million, knowing that you're going to get another $1 million or $2 million of non-dilutive funding, well, suddenly my investment has now triggered a larger pool of capital that doesn't eat into the dilution of my ownership in your company. So in the long run, it's good. But I will say that it's important to understand the administration, the interest rate, the cost of getting that non-dilutive capital. Because if your loan servicing winds up eating into your cash flow significantly and you're not able to grow, well, that's kind of defeating the purpose, right? If all you're worried about is making these loan payments every so often, or it's, for $500,000, you have to report weekly to a committee and you have to fill out, 5 hours worth of paperwork a week. Measure it off. In general, though, as an investor, we look at it as a positive thing for you to get non-dilutive on our end, anyhow.
Thanks, Arden. And I am seeing I'm 3 minutes over. I'm not entirely sure the booking of this. I think it's to 4:30, and Marina has just posted a comment. So maybe I'll wrap up my moderation there, Marina, and maybe you and Paramita can share what's next. So again, thanks everyone for the questions. I'm sticking around for as long as everybody needs me. And I hope the rest of you as well. But Paramita, could you share with us the next moments for this event?
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been wonderful. What I would like at this moment to do is, if we would like to have a picture, a photo for all of us, so we would request permission from those of you who would like to turn on your cameras, maybe for a screenshot. We are coming to the end of our program here. Thank you so much, all of you who have been with us Thank you to panelists and to Tony for facilitating such a wonderful discussion that we are already 20 minutes past our end time of 4:30. So that shows the engagement of the audience. That shows how successful we have been. So a big round of applause to all of you. Thank you so much. Here ends our session.